My name is John Carethers. I'm a gastroenterologist. I'm currently chair of medicine at the University of Michigan. And for the last 2 years, I've been vice president, president-elect, and soon will be president of the AGA.
So could you give us some brief background on how you got into the medical field and gastroenterology?
Most medical students, they experience a lot of different aspects of medicine. I didn't come into GI until I met a gastroenterologist in my junior year of residency. I came this close to becoming a medical oncologist, and it was Jules Dienstag, who was a hepatologist actually, who was a clinical researcher and did all the hepatitis B and hepatitis A vaccine trials. And I just loved the way he thought and approached things. And that month, I changed to gastroenterology. And here I am later. And interestingly, Dr. Dienstag, who just read my biography for the incoming AGA president, he sent me a note 2 days ago, and he was very impressed at how I turned out. So it was a very, and he was one of the inspirations for me to go into gastroenterology.
So what would you tell someone who's considering a career in gastroenterology?
Well, gastroenterology is fun. Amongst people who have done surveys amongst different specialties, we tend to be one of the happier specialties. And I think it's because we see patients, we do procedures, we can affect things acutely and have high satisfaction for fixing, for instance, a bleeder at night or food impaction. We now have treatments for chronic diseases like hepatitis C, so we can cure infectious diseases that we couldn't cure before, like when I went into gastroenterology. And I think there's a huge science behind it, everything from understanding general physiology to neuroendocrinology to motility issues to oncology to acute infectious diseases. GI covers it all. And I think the opportunity is there for anyone going to gastroenterology to be anything from just taking care of patients to all the way to being someone like me who went into academics and is a chair of medicine. The opportunity is wide open in our field of gastroenterology for careers.
So what motivated you to join the AGA board and eventually want to become president?
Well, the AGA is one of the first organizations I joined as a young fellow. Back in 1993, I was a fellow from 1992 to 1995, so I joined really at the end of my first year, one of the first organizations I've ever joined. And over time, I've noticed, first of all, I've participated in every DDW since then, 1994 on, by presenting everything, stuff that I've learned and discovered in our own laboratory and research programs. But also, the AGA has changed with the times. And when I initially joined the AGA, it was very good on science, very good on pushing the clinical practice, having advocacy, and I've seen that enhance over time. And one of the reasons I think I've joined the governing board and the leadership was because I wanted to be involved and help shape that as well. And to me, it was exciting. Now, it was up to the nomination committee to get me on the board, but it's exciting, and I've seen this in some of the other endeavors I'm involved as a leader in medicine, and the AGA is at the forefront. And one of the things I will tell you most acutely is the AGA Equity Project. There are very few organizations that have the depth and breadth of what we're doing in the AGA. In fact, other organizations have called me about how are you guys doing that.
So how do you want to leave your mark?
One is the AGA Equity Project. That's a multi-year endeavor that is going to hopefully transform and make things that we do in the GI world equitable across the board. And I think the AGA is going to be a model organization across the entire industry for this. I was fortunate to follow Dr. John Inadomi, and I'm fortunate to have Dr. Barbara Young follow me in the AGA presidencies. And we are all have an interest in colon cancer. And so pushing the colon cancer continuum for our patients, for our insurance coverage, for our providers is a key thing. And many of these endeavors take multiple years. And so that's a fortunate way that the presidents are in succession with that same interest. The other thing I'll say is membership. I think the world has changed. We have a lot of young members coming into GI, doing everything from social media and have a different way of doing things than even my generation. And getting them excited about GI, getting them excited about participating. You know, we have real world issues in GI. We have old institutions such as US Congress, you know, and how things are run. We have CMS, and these are, and so some of the realities of how we approach that and how we advocate for that are maybe a little different than we did 5 or 10 years ago, just because the world has changed a lot. The last thing I'll say is we're also in the era of social issues, environmental issues, governance and equity. And I think the AGA has done a wonderful job in those regards, but other things we have to pay attention. And I'm hoping our young people can get excited about that and keep GI active for the future.
What impact has being an AGA leader had on you personally?
Oh, learning, camaraderie, learning from some of the, I'll say, the senior leaders that have been around a while, past presidents, past council members, and seeing how the national and international reach of the AGA stems. I mean, I'm the incoming president in a few weeks, but I've already had inquiries from leaders of, let's say, a pancreatic organization who wants to help push pancreatic cyst guidelines and understanding that better, and wants to partner with the AGA because we have such a broad reach. Because they know the reach, and I know the reach of the AGA. One of the most premier things is DDW. I know it's 4 organizations participate in this, but this is really the showcase for what we do in our practice, what we do as a science that cross anywhere from the mouth to the anus, from the gut to the brain, to how the pancreas works and the liver, and anything in between. And and my colleagues, I continue to learn from them, from the leadership roles, as well as hopefully I can impart that to new leaders in the new generation of gastroenterologists in the future.
So could you share some thoughts on where AGA is today?
Sure. You know, AGA has been an organization since 1897, and I found out something interesting several weeks ago when our CEO made a presentation, and the founding member was from Detroit, and I'm a Detroit person, born and raised there. And so I had no idea the GI organization started in my hometown of Detroit. But since 1897, and even since our journals, which started I think in the 40s or 50s, it's really expound the reach and understanding of gastroenterology from the ancient times of a bullet hitting a former military person and Beaumont studying what gastric secretions are, to now learning how CRISPR-Cas and does things at the molecular level and how we can apply that to GI diseases. It's the world has changed in the last 125 years, and AGA has not only helped direct that, but rolled with it. When NIH really ramped up their push for biomedical science and the reach of the American public and American science post-World War II, AGA was there advocating for that, and it continues to advocate that even when we have up and down budgets from Congress. The AGA was there when new things such as the discovery of H. pylori by 1 or 2 of our members that led to the Nobel Prize. The AGA is there learning how new technologies image the small intestine and discover things without any major incision, and treat them as well. And the AGA is there for many of our young people who are interested in studying, the general physiology or molecular biology of what makes the GI tract tick. So the AGA is one of the constant things there across over a century of work of science and practice. And I think I'm looking forward to the next 125 years with that, with a lot of participation from our members.
What is your hope for AJ's future?
My hope for the AJ's future is that it continues to be the premier organization for gastroenterologists and hepatologists, and that the AGA will advocate for our young members all the way to I'll say most of our senior members as well, that we understand how the world changes, including things that affect, where in the world how does GI affect the environment? How does GI affect, I'll say, governance and social issues down on our planet? Now, our organization is really to advocate for our clinicians and our GI scientists, but we have to keep those things in mind as we do that advocating. I'm not saying that's our principal driver, but we have to keep that in mind as we go forward. So, in the next 100, 125 years, I'm hoping, if I made some predictions, I hope the AGA has double the members, maybe even more after 100 years, that we're one of the most formidable organizations in the United States and perhaps on the planet that really advocate for GI diseases and cures. I hope some of the diseases that we work on have been cured. I'm sure there'll be new ones that crop up over time, and that we'll be with our members, will be the first to try to address those things, much like we saw with even the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, in a short year, we learned a lot, and we had some approaches to trying to control the disease. And I can imagine that for many GI diseases that will crop up. I can't predict what they are going to be, but in 100 years, I'm sure there's going to be a few others.